Find and learn from people who lived it wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from people who lived it.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
It's going to be a little different today. I'm just going to tell everybody right now, it's going to be a little different podcast than we typically run, and that is because we're going to sit down with Kara Branch today. Now, before we get into Kara and her story, I want to share with my audience something that you may or may not know. At the beginning of the pandemic, I called my friend Lloyd Hopkins, who many of you know, listen to this podcast. He runs $1 million teacher program. And I said, Lloyd, we're in a really bad spot. We've got millions of kids that are sitting in Title I schools who tomorrow, when they dictate that all of this has got to go online and they have to have a laptop to learn, are going to be screwed. They're not going to be connected to their teachers anymore. Number one, they don't have the internet. Number two, they don't have the means to get connected to the internet via a device. So we got into the weeds. We got $15,000 out of the gate. We went and we bought as many Chromebooks as we can, and we dropped them off at a very deserving school here in Phoenix, and we hooked up 62 different kids with their first laptop, their own personal laptop. There's no connection to it. We don't need it back. That's how this thing works. And we overnight created something called Title I Tech. Okay, so let's fast forward a couple of years, and we've enlisted the help of Sharika Jackson, who runs Future Stars AZ. This is a hands-on STEM program where Sharika's goal and mission is to inspire other little girls who look just like her to enter the world of STEM. And that is where the intersection of what I do and what Kara Branch does come together. So, Kara, first up, welcome to our podcast today. What part of the world are you in?
So I am here in Houston, Texas.
Let's jump into this, Kara, because like I said, today's podcast is going to be a little different. And you and I, before we even started, kind of said, hey, you know what? If when we're done today, some little girl decides that the STEM program, that she has access to is going to be the thing for her, that's a win. It's also going to be a win if we just plant that seed for somebody else. And I actually want to show everybody who's watching on YouTube this really cool infographic that Kara created on her website, whereas she suggests that it's like a tree. We have this idea where we get to the kids young and they're that subsoil and that soil. And then, they start to see what is possible in 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th grade. And then before you know it, they're branching up, they're blossoming, they're coming into their leaves, they're coming into their foliage, that is a really good illustration of how it happens. And so I'm going to ask you this first question, which is, where were you on this tree when you got started and you got turned on to STEM?
Yeah, so very far up the tree.
You were.
High school is where I found my love for chemistry. But I was most definitely at the crown when I learned that I can even become a chemical engineer.
Wow.
So I started very, very late. I was always a very, very smart child, always excelled in my coursework. My mom, I come from an underserved community myself. My mom was a single mom, and resources was limited. And so I spent a lot of my growth in school, but my teachers telling my mom, your daughter's very, very smart. But one of the things I struggled with is that no one ever told my mom what to do with her smart daughter. Mm-hmm. So I spent most of my time making just great grades, and that's was making my mom very much so proud. But I owe it to my teacher, my chemistry teacher, Miss Chapman. She's the one who helped me find my love for chemistry. Because when she would get in that classroom and she would put these equations to be balanced on the board, it just made sense to me. I just knew how to do it. No matter what she threw up there, I can do it. And I was like, well, why do I get this? And so when I would take tests and stuff for her class, I excelled very well. But it wasn't until we took the STAR test, which is a standardized test here in Texas. It's called something else for sure now. But when I was in school, it was the STAR test. And she said to our class that if you pass the science portion, you won't have to take your final. And I was the only person in my class who passed the science portion of my test.
Good for you.
And so that's when it dinged in my head, like, you really are good at this science and chemistry stuff. And so I knew I had a love for it, but it wasn't until my freshman year that I even knew that I could put it with my skills in mathematics and become a chemical engineer. And that was my freshman year of college.
I'm wondering, I want to ask you something. You may or may not know the answer to this question. Actually, you may have learned the answer to this question over the years and in some of the work that you do. When a teacher comes to a parent and they say, your student is super bright and they should be thinking about this, is it your opinion, or do you have maybe some factual, some data that supports this claim? But is it your opinion that some people may not even know what to do with that idea that I'm really smart and what's next, because there's not enough opportunity available to them? And so it's like, hey, your daughter's really smart, she'd be good at this, but nobody really knows what to do with her, where to put her, or how to handle this situation, because maybe they're, like you said, you're in an underserved community where there aren't these programs that are more robust. As that, like I think about my kid's own high school. And if our teachers came to us and they were like, your kid's brilliant and this, and this, they offer a class. There's probably a place right there at the school where we can funnel them into to help them be successful. Do you think enough schools are set up to help students be successful in that space, or is that still something we're really working on?
So I'm going to most definitely go from opinion. I think it depends on where you live.
Okay.
I've learned that because my children life, because I have obtained my college degree and things like that, is so much different in mine. So like with my children's school, they definitely have more resources, more departments, where my daughter's school has like a whole robotics building, right?
Amazing.
So like it depends on where you're located. So her school may have that, but you may not drive just down the street, and that school may not have any of that. So it's most definitely resources and money. And I also feel that I know for sure here in Texas that teachers do have guidelines that they have to follow to make sure students are ready for standardized testing here. And so a lot of times STEM education doesn't fall within those guidelines. I did have things like AP classes that I can take when I was in school. But I feel like AP was great, but everybody's not the best test takers to actually do well on those AP tests.
Yeah, so, that's me. Terrible test taker. Terrible test taker. Yeah.
So it's great, but I really wish someone would have pushed me like to a club, like something like my organization, or just any club that can relate to me getting hands-on learning about things that I can do with science. Or sometimes it could have just been a simple movie. A lot of times I may do a movie day with my girls so they can see cool things around STEM through a visual of a film to inspire them. So I think my teachers probably was just under that pressure that many teachers today may be under. It's just having to continue to build those curriculums and things like that to do well on testing.
So you brought it up. I'm going to ask you, what are there some movies that you recommend that parents watch with their kids to get them inspired?
Yeah. So movies we watched in our program, one of my favorite is Hidden Figures. That inspires me on a daily basis, especially as working in industry. Another movie my girls have watched in our program is Wakanda Forever, more so because it was more geared to a lot of women in STEM, doing a lot of great engineering work and things like that in that movie. And we did those two movies based off of representation, just so they can see themselves depicted in these films, to be able to know that they can do that too.
Yeah, well, you brought it up, so let's go there next. You can see right here on your website, you've got this great infographic that talks about who's in STEM. And you can see that only 2.9% of Black women are involved in this program. Double that for Asian women, a little more than that for Latina. And then there's this kind of other category. And then look at that, 65% men. So it's clearly a male-dominated field. I like to use this word. It's traditionally been a male-dominated field. Like, I think that there's change coming, and thanks to groups like yours, those numbers are going to shift over time. But how do you? Maybe you know the answer to this question. It's like, how do you make STEM seem cool to kids? How do you make STEM look as exciting as being an actor, an actress, an athlete, working in as a lawyer or a doctor, or some of these other, sort of traditional roles that all kids seem to get hyped up about? How do we make STEM exciting for them to even want to look at it?
Yeah, so a lot of different tactics I use, and this is what I love to do. I operate off of those two words alone, which is representation and exposure.
Okay.
So the exposure piece is where I do make it fun and relatable for the girls that I work with, in many different ways. So we have girls in our programs, as we focus on STEM as a whole. They may want to be a cartoonist. So helping them explore what that looks like and giving them like digital animation projects and things for them to do to really
so cool. Yes.
Take it from just a sketch that they draw to bring it to life. So I've done it that way. I have girls who love art, but they love STEM as well. So I've taken my girls to the opera. I wanted them to sit at the opera and see all that goes on behind the scene for production to make that happen, because a lot of that is STEM. And so we've done it that way. For my girls who are gamers, I help them test that. You may love to play Roblox, you may love Minecraft, but what happens behind that? So helping them create their own games, helping them understand that with that skill, that foundation of coding or programming and things like that, that you too can make your own game and have a multi-million-dollar empire. So helping them understand you may like these things and you can do all these things with STEM, and making those activities so fun and cool that they want more. And that's something we've done here at Black Girls Do Engineer. Our girls keep coming back for more of learning. We've made things around makeup, right? If you like makeup, well, let's make it, We've done camps around building your own empire when making such things as candles. And I've had girls leave those camps and go start their own candle business. So it's really about taking exposure and showing them that you like this, and it's STEM. A lot of this is rooted around STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics careers. And it takes people with those degrees to be the ones to help implement all that you're seeing in front of you.
That's one of the greatest answers anybody's ever given us on this podcast. That's so good. It's so tactical. It's so, I can listen to this, listen, you and I are going to talk today, and then I'm going to call my friend Sharika after we're done, because she's doing what you're doing in Houston here in Phoenix. And I'm going to say, you need to listen to this interview, because what Kara is doing is incredible. I mean, I didn't expect you to say things like makeup and candle empires and opera and STEM, but you're right. That's what it takes. It takes showing them the thing that they ultimately want to do, and then saying, here's how you do it, right? Like the language that I have around my kids is, don't go work for the company, own the company. Like that's what, and that's kind of what you're saying too. It's like, don't play the damn video game, create the video game.
Yeah. That's what I tell them.
Like that's the win here, is to create this thing. Can I ask you, as you are in this field and, you every day, this is what you do for a living, do you still notice some of that infographic that I showed here? I mean, is this still pretty true? Is it still mostly men? Is there still not enough women of color that are getting involved in STEM?
Yeah, so I follow this data a lot. So the numbers are growing. So it's like about 35% still for women coming into the space, but that 5%, that's women of color, is not changing. Black women are still represented about 3% across every industry, and I've worked in many of them, and it's not changing. I do see with my program, because we've put so many girls through college and they're working on their STEM careers now. We have girls who are in the workforce that, yes, I used to tell people, like, give me about 3-4 more years and I'm going to start pushing them out like crazy.
Yeah, right.
But it's like, it's not changing. There is some good of change in these industries, like as far as people being able to be themselves, which is something that I didn't have the privilege to really do, as far as like from a cultural aspect and being who they are. That is a change that is occurring. But as far as more women in the space, it's not so much.
So I have to imagine on this podcast, we spend a lot of time talking about trauma and things that have happened to us along the way. And I don't care how you slice it, man. When you're in a field like that where you're male dominated, have you had incidents on the way up where you have felt like they treat you very, very differently based on the way that you look or where you came from or something like that?
I think for me, it was more of my voice not being heard.
Okay.
Like one story I love to give. One of my jobs was a job when I went into manufacturing. So I started my career more in the corporate environment.
Okay.
And then I transitioned into manufacturing because I wanted to be on the ground with my people, right? And I remember starting with interns. I started at the same time with interns. And I was giving my crew directions on how to help with the project. And they went to my manager, who was a man, and asked him, do I have to listen to her? Is she an intern or does she actually work here? And my manager was like, she actually works here. You might want to listen to her. And so I always was laugh about it now. But at first I was like, man,
right.
Like they didn't hear me. They didn't think I even was a engineer here. Right. But I do owe it to my manager for stepping up for me. And I've always had a lot of men be my allies to help me throughout my career. But I spend a lot of time trying to make my voice be heard. And that's hard when you're in rooms.
Yeah. So we need more of what you just said. We need more people, we need more men, quite frankly, who are in this field to get behind projects like yours, because what you just experienced, I think, happens in almost every sector of the world. I'm in a few different spaces, but one of the spaces that I'm in, Kara, is coaching. And I coach high school athletes. And I've seen this before where we bring in potentially a woman coach to our program, and the kids, she's a coach. She knows as much as we do. She's well-versed. She's a smart person. She's got a history. She's been coaching for years, and they still don't take her seriously sometimes. Yeah. And they still look to me and they're like, I don't know about this person. And it is up to me as the guy who runs the program to say, she's my voice. If she talks, it's the same thing as me talking. So end of discussion. And we need more allies to lift people up who are kind of doing the right thing. And so I want to talk specifically to that group right now. Kara, you have an opportunity to be in front of a few 100,000 people. And what do they need to hear? If they're already in the STEM space and they're looking to support groups like yours and raise programs like yours up, what's going to be important for them to do to be your ally? What does being an ally look like?
Yeah. The thing that comes to the top of my head is let us in these rooms. Yes. And when I say rooms, in these boardrooms, for one, we need to be there, women for sure. Yeah. Black women are not in these rooms. Women are not in these rooms, period. And so we need to be let into these rooms. And why we need to be let into these rooms is because we bring a lot of value to these companies. We grow these companies very, very so often, keep the organization there. We're hard workers. We can do it just like anybody else in the company. And when I say we, women. So I want them to just know to open the door and let us in.
That's it. And not one and done. Don't let a couple in and then be like, well, okay, we're good. We hit our quota. It's like, no. Yeah. Keep pressing, keep moving, keep going. Because I often get excited about what could happen if we had a room that looked like the community we live in. And these were the folks making the decisions, especially from a STEM standpoint, where it's all that brainy stuff that doesn't make any sense to me, but makes perfect sense to you. You all are really the folks who are coming up with these big, bright, beautiful, imaginative ideas. And we need you. We need you to move us forward on that whole thing. So, let's stay on this for just a second. Being an ally, if I'm listening to this podcast right now and I'm going, you know what? I want to do something to help. Let's talk specifically about your organization, but then I'll tell anybody locally here in Phoenix to look up Future Stars AZ, because what Sharika is doing is freaking amazing. But how could somebody support your organization? What would that look like?
Absolutely. So I'll speak to my ally. I just gave him the Ally of the Year award.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'll speak to why he most definitely earned it. Because I always felt like he was an email away. So as you build these organizations, there's so much work that goes into it. It's so much support that's needed. And there's so much as just me, people who know me, that I want to do. Like, I am most definitely a hard worker, and I want to do a billion things a year.
Right.
For my ally, he was just always an email away. I would say to him, and his name's Brian, I would say, Brian, I want to take these girls to go tour this campus. And he would say, well, how much? And I'll tell him, he'll say, go do it, because he's seen the growth, right, of these girls and the importance of it needed to be there. Or sometimes he can just be a call away, just to say, hey, I want to come see your company, or can I bring these girls here? Come on. Don't ask questions, just know and see for yourself that these people are doing great work in their organizations, and support them. And that could be a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to just be from a financial aspect. It could just be in the room that you're in. If someone is looking to give back, or ways to give back, by just mentioning an organization like Black Girls Do Engineer, or a woman in general, can open up so many doors in itself.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm thinking about as you're talking is, like, you mentioned, like, I'm a hard worker, I want to do a billion things a day. Investing in people like you who are really eager to get this done, like, you guys have something to prove. Like, those are the kind of people I want to work with. Like, they've got something to show us, and they want people to see what they're capable of. And that energy for a company is, like, you talk about shifting a culture. Like, that's how you shift culture. Put people that want to be in the room and have something to prove, because they're going to come to work every day and tear it up. At least that's been my experience. I like it. So an email away, a phone call away. I always think too, it's things like, as the outside looking in, to maybe quarterly be placing phone calls or emails to organizations like yours, going, hey, I'm so-and-so, willing and able to provide anything that you guys might need to get this done, whether it's office space, right? Yeah. That's a big thing for people. Like, where can I set up an office so that this can be my hub, so I can run this out of? Where's a great community center where I can get everybody together for STEM fairs on the weekends?
Absolutely.
People have access to those things, right? Like, yes, money is also great, but we do need real estate. We do need a place to gather. We need schools to get into relationships with organizations like yours to develop internship programs and mentorship programs, and then eventually hiring programs. And you probably love this statistic about your organization that you run, which is the program is currently 100% college acceptance rate and 100% job placement rate. Like, freaking giddy up, girl. It's so great.
And I actually this year sat down and thought about that. Because when I first started, I was so focused on building the future pipeline of STEM.
Of course.
I just thought about corporations, like getting my girls into these spaces, right? Into jobs. But I learned recently this year is that it wasn't just about corporations. It was about colleges too. I had so many colleges that reached out to me who has an interest in my girls because they're such high scholars. And I never thought about that. It's those two pieces that go together, and it's really made our organization be successful. So I really owe it to my girls from my program. They're the scholars. They're the ones who work very, very hard. They're the ones who show up every meeting, every event to do this work. And I get to have them under my umbrella to learn from me and the curriculum I've built and the things I've done with this program. And they're going out into this world and really excelling. So I really owe it to them. I give them the space and the great teachings to make them better, but they're the rock stars themselves.
I have a question for you, something that just kind of came to my mind, and I don't know if we're going to find a way to answer this question, but let's try. Let's just have a little discussion here for a second. I can imagine a scenario, and this is universally true, but where a child comes home and they're like, Mom, Dad, I want to do this. I had this thing exposed to me and I want to do this, right? And so then the mom and dad, they're not in that field. in any way, shape, or form. They don't know anything about STEM. It doesn't make any sense to them. Maybe they're a parent like me and they can't add 3 plus 3. Like, I'm just using myself as an example. If my children came home and they wanted to do a STEM program, I wouldn't even know where to start. I wouldn't know what to do for them. And I could imagine that there are situations where people go, hey, I want to do this, but then somebody puts them in a box and somebody says, that's not what girls like you do, or that's not what boys like you do. Have you experienced that? And then if you have, maybe there's some real tangible tactical information that you could pass out on how parents and children alike can sort of overcome those obstacles.
So I say for me, because it was a very late start for me, even learning that I could become a chemical engineer, I can't say that I experienced being put in a box. So it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do. Like, I always make my girls laugh with this, but actually what I was going to do in school, I wanted to be a dance major. Absolutely. And my goal was to go dance and be a background dancer for Usher, right?
Yes. Yes. I love that.
And coming from an underserved community and being involved in sports and things like that, that's the norm. Like, no one's going to say to you, don't go for it, because that's the way out of these communities is through a form of a sport. So I never had anyone tell me that. But I do have people around me who serve on my boards who have been told they cannot do it. And I'll share a glimpse of their story because it's really their story. But one of my board members who is a dentist, and she graduated from Columbia, and it was made like she's not supposed to be at Columbia, right? That's just not a dream. That's just a dream too far for you to reach. And so, it's stories like that women do face often. As Black women, that we don't belong in these spaces, in these rooms. Right. And that's not the case. I know with my program, I make it a very safe space for my girls to come in here and dream. My goal is not about where you want to go. It's about, I need your top 10 schools so we can know where you can go. And my goal is to go show you as many of those schools that I can, so you can understand if this is the right fit for you. So we don't put limits on them. We make them understand and know that they can go anywhere. I probably have struggled in my actual career more so where when it came to me trying to go to leadership roles, I have been told that I need to get a MBA degree, right? When no one in my leadership team had one, stuff like that. So having to be told that I need so much more qualifications to become a leader in someone's company, those are probably like roadblocks I've hit. But I kind of fought my way out. I just built my own company and then and watched it soar, right? And now people, they ask me to come work for them to help them understand how to do it, right? So it's kind of more so like those are roadblocks I've hit. But I try to, as a mom myself of 3 girls, because I didn't have resources or opportunities or an understanding until very late in my life on what to do. I've worked hard to make sure myself is staying current and doing everything that I could do for my children so that they don't have to have those same obstacles. And even the girls in my program, so that they know that they can achieve anything. If someone even does tell them no, to keep going anyway.
Yeah, it's just, it happens to so many people on so many different levels, and it's all about how you react and how you overcome and to the situation, right? And listen, people get told no every single day of their lives. People get told they're not qualified every single day of their lives, and how you react to it is really what I think sets you apart from others. Because if I'm not mistaken, didn't you go and get your MBA?
Yeah.
So
I actually got my executive MBA during the starting up of my company, all at the same time.
There it is.
And because I tell people and I tell myself, like, when I was going through this, of course it was tough. I had all kind of like things that crossed my head, like maybe I'm not, or can I do this? Or man, it feels like I'm never gonna get to where I need to get to, right? But I learned as I stepped out on my own, and it's all about your mindset.
Yes.
I had to learn that for myself. Like if I changed my mindset to be what I needed to be, some things that I viewed, I won't view them the same way. Like for example, being the only Black woman in all of my roles, I used to sit at home and be like, man, like this is hard. This is tough. I felt like I couldn't be myself. Like, it's like, why can't I come to work and dress up as I would want to? Right. That's why we're so many colors now, because it's my staple of being me.
Yeah.
Or just having people adapt to my culture. So I dealt with that so much in my career that I let it eat at me at night, or I let it even sometimes I wouldn't even go home and talk about what I did with my daughters, because I just was like, go be whatever you want to be, because it was so tough for me in industry. To knowing that I had to change my mindset on that, to know you deserve to be here. You've worked hard to be here. Things like that. I had to start telling myself, you deserve to be at this table. To keep myself knowing that no matter what's going on around you, keep yourself positive, keep yourself focused. So that's something that over the recent years, I had to learn to master.
Yeah, it's difficult. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome on this podcast because it's a real thing for people. And one of the greatest definitions that we've ever received, and we talk about it all the time on this podcast, is that the imposter, stay with me on this now, everybody, the imposter is the thoughts that you're having about the situation. It's not actually real. The imposter syndrome is the thoughts that you're having, or are the thoughts that you're having about, oh, I don't know, do I belong in this room? Am I smart enough to be here? Do I deserve to be here? Those thoughts are the imposter. So you yourself are actually the very willing, capable person to achieve whatever dream you're thinking about. Just know that the imposter is simply the thoughts. And I like that definition so much, Kara, because then, listen, let's go a little deeper, right? The average human has 60,000 thoughts in a day. It's really, really simple to look at that and go, some of those thoughts are going to be really crappy, and some of those thoughts are going to be super garbage thoughts. And so that's it. The imposter is garbage thoughts. It's not real. Find ways to overcome it. The person who's nervous and anxious is the person who's not prepared. And so if you've done the work, if you have prepared yourself for the room that you're getting ready to be in, or you're willing to be a really quick study and quick learner, and you can prove that, well, then you belong. So I just wanted to say that really quick to anybody, because I think that's a really helpful thing for parents to share with their children. It's like, hey, do you ever get into this room, sweetie, and feel like maybe you don't belong there? Because I felt that way before too, but those are just your thoughts and they're not real. You do belong in that room and you're okay to be there, and sort of building up their confidence that when they walk in the room, because as well as I do, Kara, it would be really easy to hype yourself up to walk into the room and for one or two things to happen that remind you that maybe you're not supposed to be in that room or something like that, right? And just go back to that every time. Okay, hold on. The imposter is the thoughts. They're just thoughts. They don't have to turn into my beliefs, and they don't have to turn into the way that I operate my life. Any piece of that resonate with you as a part of your journey?
Yeah, most definitely. I agree with you right there. It's most definitely, it's in your head. You're giving yourself that self-doubt. Yep. Preparation is key. The reason that I was able to soar in those rooms is because I made sure I put in the effort, the time to be the best at what I was doing. And once you feel prepared about it, you can go, for sure. It worked for me to go in there and shine. And it always, at the end of the day, not only made me believe in myself, but made everybody around me believe in me and my capability. And so it just made my environment better as well. Cause like, I'll go back to that job where when I first started and they were like, do we need to listen to her? Well, over years of being there, they gained a lot of respect for me because they seen what I was willing to do and the things that I were bringing into our facility for them. And that I really cared about making their job and their day-to-day better. So those same men who questioned me are the same men that I still have a relationship with today. And they kind of became protectors over me in the space. And that was because they seen all that I was capable of, and I was prepared to be the best that I was going to be at that job. So
that's it. That's it. That's the thing that I need everybody to key in on. It's not enough to just show up and demand respect. You have to show up, put in the work, be consistent with your efforts, and then over time, people will see. I think about like the one job that I don't think anybody in the world would ever want in the history of the world, and that's being the president of the United States, right? It's like,
yeah,
it sounds like a great job, but you can't get respect in that job if you do a lot of great things for 4 years.
Yeah.
You can't, I mean, and so consistency is the key. And you have to know that, like, just because and I think the point of me sharing that little blip is, just because you have the title doesn't mean that people are going to start respecting you. Just because, you know what I mean? Do they have to listen to you in certain situations? And maybe in certain meetings, you hold a little bit more clout? Yeah, for sure. Those are truths. But don't expect everybody that the moment it goes on your business card that you're this person, that everybody goes, okay, great. She's omniscient. She's the one we go to from now on for all things. It's just, that's not how it works. You will still need to put in the work to, like you said, keep a pretty consistent attitude about the whole thing. And whether that's positivity or neutrality, I think they're really important ingredients in trying to break down some of these barriers, because, you know, you start getting the self-doubt and the bad thoughts and the negative self-talk and lose your focus and your body language sucks. Like, man, nobody wants to work with that person. So we do need to kind of keep our, what's the line that I love so much that my friend Susan says, something about like, don't mistake the wishbone where the backbone's supposed to be. I've butchered that sentence, but it's something to that effect. Like, you can't show up with a wishbone. You have to show up with a backbone. You actually have to be strong. Right.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. All right. As we wind down here over the next couple of minutes, I want to talk specifically about some of the emerging jobs, careers, places that people are going to want to think about and go. And this question comes from, I was in a room 3 or 4 days ago. Yeah, about 3 or 4 days ago. And this guy said something that I thought was so smart. He said, I'm telling my kids to choose a career that's going to be needed 10 years in the future. And so the point in that was like, he's thinking about where are we headed and what jobs are going to be needed for those types of things. So in the spirit of that question, what kinds of careers in the STEM field should we be thinking about over the next 5 to 10 years for our, little boys, little girls, for everybody?
Yeah. So this is most definitely a great question for me because I'm an innovator at heart.
I love this.
So since I've worked across many different sectors, oil and gas, tech, the space industry, one skill set I used across all of them was most definitely tech, right? So one thing I like to let people think about before I go into using those big words of those careers they can go into, is it's important to have some type of foundation, whether in a tech discipline. So like learning the code is going to be important for everyone. Whether it's something that's very just an understanding of it or being great at it, whatever you choose, that's going to be important for the future. They're really getting grounded in your technical skills, learning how to use things such as, I'm trying to think of like Word, like really getting your digital skills up. That's going to be important for every single person in this world because it's most definitely the future. Yeah. The world is evolving very quickly around tech every day. You can see it yourself on the internet. Someone is always releasing some tech model that the company have been working hard for. So that's where I like to tell people to start with those type of skill set building and learnings. But the careers that I see and one that I love very, very, very so much is artificial intelligence. Is something that I'm really into. It's not a new thing. It's been around for several years, but it's most definitely is making its wave now, and most definitely towards the future. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of automation that people are implementing into their system. So AI has been a great tool for whether you're just at home listening to Alexa or whatever you choose to listen to also having implementations from using ChatGPT, which a lot of people are using to help and guide them. I use it. You can use it to ask like, hey, if I'm going to Arizona, what can I do in Arizona? And it'll populate really quick some cool things for you to do while you're there. So it's a very cool, fast tool. It's used not just in our everyday lives, but like when you're using your GPS, you may be just on your email or on the internet and something may just pop up asking you, do you want to use AI to help rewrite or do something of some sort? So it is most definitely the future. So I want people to understand it and understand how to use it, because it's going to play a huge part in two things. One is safety. You need to understand how to use it and to be safe as you're using it. And the other thing that a lot of people that I care about is the diversity components, making sure that everyone who will be using it is being implemented into this technology, so that no one's left behind, right, when it comes to AI. So that is another huge one. That's like my favorite one that I think that everybody's diving into when it comes to whether AI or being some type of developer. All these things are critical. They play a huge part in robotics, and a lot of people have that fear of robots. The number one thing is, are robots going to take my job? Well, one thing I would say that I teach my girls is programming is what makes that robot operate, right?
That's what I was going to say. Learn to program the robot, and then you're going to have job security.
Absolutely. So I like to, then that's where those coding skills come into play, or just understanding. I just want everyone to have that cool, like really ground understanding of what this technology is and what it does, because that'll be helpful for them and themselves. And so I would say that's my number one job, developers, software engineering. Those are very, very common on the rise jobs. Great industry to be in. A lot of money to be made. To be made in this space. So that would be my number one. I always tell people I'm a chemical engineer because that's what I learned and fell in love with chemistry. But as I've become a chemical engineer, I've worked in so many different industries, and I'm really good at data engineering. So I always tell people I should have been a data engineer had I known that. That's why exposure is important. But having that skill set is going to be critical for the future.
When it comes to STEM, there's some of the highest paying jobs, and you just mentioned it, right? Mm-hmm. There's money to be made in these fields. My son is going to be an engineer. He'll be a senior in high school next year, and then he's planning on attending Arizona State University, which is one of the best engineering schools in the country. And he's going to work on getting his degree in that field. And if I'm not mistaken, they talked about most engineering jobs starting off at around $90,000 a year for these careers, and people with a master's degree probably a little bit closer to 105. They said you could add about $15,000 for every degree that you picked up. So is that consistent with some of the stuff you're seeing out there? Yeah.
I've watched a lot of people come out of college with me who was at that pay. So imagine being a 21-year-old coming out of college, making a really, really nice salary for yourself. It's most definitely the case. But I always like to go from the place of, yes, you make a lot of money, but you got to have the passion.
Yeah, for sure.
Being an engineer is hard. It is hard work. You are the brains behind many, many operations. And so depending on where you work, I know when I worked in oil and gas, I was the brains behind the organization, but also I had to make sure my people were safe when we were in refineries and stuff like that.
See.
So it's like, you really have to make sure that you are doing it because you truly love to do it, because it is a very, very hard thing to do. But it's also fun. You get to do a lot of innovation. You get to do a lot of cool projects that's around many, many years after you probably leave this earth. Your work is still here. And so it's a beautiful thing when you do solve those hard problems and get stuff to work. but it's also, you have to do it for not just the money, but the passion has to be there too.
That's it, man. I'll tell everybody listening, you think you can do things for the money. You do. Trust me. You think you can do them for the money, and you probably can't for a little while, but eventually you will burn right out, because your passion has to be deeper in that thing. And there's no truer way to articulate this than to tell people that listen to my podcast. I used to be in radio and television broadcasting for 28 years, Kara, and I got to a point, and I simultaneously, when I was at the stage in my career where I was making the most money, we're talking several $100,000s a year, I was the unhappiest I had ever been in my career. And so I say that to articulate, you think money's going to change your problems, your life, this, that, the other thing. It's just not true. It will solve some issues. You'll be able to pay your bills. That's fun. That's great, right? You'll be able to take care of yourself, go on vacations. That's great. But the deep-rooted issues that a lot of us deal with, and most of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast, money cannot change those things. A passion can, a purpose can, legacy. Those are the words that you really need to step into if you really want to feel excellent about yourself and your family and just where you're headed and all of those things. Well, I have to tell you, I've loved chatting with you, Kara. This has been such a different podcast for us, but critically important. And as I said in the beginning, I'm already in this space that you're in. I've been here for several years trying to sound the trumpet, trying to make sure that other people know that there are people just like you doing this kind of work, and we need to find them. We need to, do everything we can to amplify their voice and make sure other people know about them, because the more that we get of this, then we start to head in a very different direction with people. We have to expose, and I'm going to go back to your graph. We have to expose these little kids. If you're listening to my podcast right now and you're right there in the soil, or you're at the trunk, now's the time to put this in front of your daughter, your son, whatever that's going to be for you. But now is the time to put it in front of them, to get them excited, because then as they come up through the ranks, they can be taking the right classes. They can be looking at the right colleges. They can be doing all the things that we all know as adults are going to set them up for the most success. Yeah. Yeah,
I agree.
Love
it. Starts young for sure.
It sure does. Well, Black Girls Do Engineering. What a cool concept. And I'm excited for you to keep on rising with this thing. And if I can ever help you out, I hope that you'll let me know. And please allow me to connect you to Sharika Jackson when we're done talking.
Absolutely. I would love to meet her.
There's power in numbers. That's the thing I know. There's power in numbers.
Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah. Appreciate you. Have a great day. Okay, Kara?
You too.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.